Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Fighter Series on Red Corner Boxing. Today, coming to you live from Cincinnati, Ohio, in the United States. This topic today centers around one of the premier figures in middleweight boxing history. We are talking about, of course, Marvellous Marvin Hagler, the menacing bald-headed figure out of Brockton, Massachusetts. Of course, Brockton, Massachusetts has some series of great fighters, most notably the great heavyweight Rocky Marciano. Marvin Hagler, coming out of Brockton, Massachusetts, had to take the very, very long, hard road just to get a title shot. Took him about as many as 40 fights until he finally got his due. When he finally got a title shot against Vito Antuofermo for the undisputed middleweight championship of the world in the two-belt era. And basically, he got the fight simply because the people who represented Massachusetts was sending letters all over the place to promoter Bob Arum, basically saying, if you don't get him a title shot, we're going to have problems. And Arum basically got him the title shot November 30th, 1979 at Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas. A doubleheader that was shared with Ray Leonard, which didn't sit too well with Marvin Hagler because he wanted his own main event so he can establish himself and show the whole world just what he's made of. But it was this particular night where Hagler displayed his skills and just basically give Antuofermo a beating. However, as we know in boxing, the judges see things different than the public and the view. And as a result, it was declared a draw, a fight that many people called the most egregious decision in boxing history, because in a 15-round fight, Hagler clearly won at least 10 of the rounds, basically doing anything and everything he wanted to Vito Antuofermo. However, after that fight, that basically Hagler basically said, I'm no longer going to leave fights to the judges. I'm going to let the fist do all the talking. And a few fights later, he finally got another shot at the title. This time he went to London, England to face Alan Minter, who just shocked Antuofermo himself in the defense of his middleweight championship. Hagler goes into his backyard, and a buildup which was filled with nasty verbiage both ways. Hagler delivered Minter a 3-round beating to where the fight was stopped by the doctor over there in London. Hagler was declared the winner and the undisputed middleweight champion, but in the typical Hagler fashion, the fight was marred by all kinds of debris being thrown in the ring, which didn't allow Marvin Hagler to have his hand raised and celebrate around the ring like all fighters usually do. His trainers, Petronelli brothers, Pat and Goody, had to escort him to the locker room to avoid getting hit with all the beer bottles and debris that was flying at them, and he's a victim of a whole bunch of other nasty verbiage on the process. But his mission was complete. He became the undisputed middleweight champion of the world. We're going to fast forward a couple years. A set fight originally for July 15th, 1982 in Windsor, Canada, originally set to face Thomas Hearns in the defense of his championship. Fight was called off simply because Hearns supposedly was injured, and there were issues in terms of where the fight was going to take place. Because of Hearns' camp wanted it in his own backyard. Hagler didn't want it. And it ticked off Marvin Hagler because he wanted the big fight to show the whole world just how great he was. And basically the Hearns camp just pulled out, citing a pinky finger injury, which upset Leonard, Hagler, to the point where Hagler basically said, if it were me, I would have cut that pinky off and just gone on with the fight. Tommy Hearns doesn't have that in him. Fast forward a few months later, we go to Baltimore, Maryland, where it was a fundraiser for Sugar Ray Leonard. And over there in the front row was Marvin Hagler. Leonard, it was about whether Leonard was going to fight Hagler or retire. Turns out Leonard tells to Hagler's face, this fight's going to be the biggest fight ever, but no way it's going to happen. Got a comment here. The typical LUAK team with all the bottles happens here all the time. Yes, I've seen a lot of those, especially at soccer fields, and it's sort of shame for that particular event because it sort of leaves a sort of bad taste for Alan Minter, who's a heck of a fighter and a heck of a guy during his time over there in London. Even Marvin Hagler forgave Alan Minter for all the things that were said. But we talk about the Baltimore event. Leonard basically said, we're not going to have this fight. And, oh yeah, I've seen it at Soccer's. Oh, yes. So the fight between Hagler and Leonard is not going to happen. Leonard retires, as we all know. So Hagler trucks on with his career, gets a fight in 1983 against Roberto Duran. In a tougher than expected fight, Hagler needs to win the last 3 rounds just to keep his title, and he did just that. fast forward a year where Tommy Hearns knocks out Roberto Duran, but now the buildup is officially started. It was in a CBS studio where they got Hagler and Hearns on different television screens, and Hagler is still pissed off at Thomas Hearns for the postponement of the originally scheduled fight in 82. And you can see the look on Thomas Hearns' face that he knows his 5 minutes of fame were up because Hagler was coming after him. And we know what happened April 15th, 1985 at Caesars Palace in Las Vegas. The most memorable and unforgettable 8-minute fight in boxing history, where it had the greatest first round ever, where both guys just went at it in a case where two sparks formed a bonfire in the biggest form of spontaneous combustion maybe in boxing history at that level. Hagler and Hearns, greatest first round ever. It certainly was a war. Actually, how you know it was going to be a war? Marvin Hagler wore the hat war during all of his interviews and press conferences prior to the Hearns fight. It made you let you know what was on Hagler's mind. When he went out there, he went after Hearns, didn't back up an inch. Hearns came back on his own, unfortunately broke his right hand in the first round, and Hagler just took over. And after a questionable timeout because of a cut high in Hagler's head, Marvin Hagler turned it up, threw the right hook, got Hearns out of there, and the fight was over in the third round. The roughest 8 minutes in boxing history, maybe the greatest short fight in boxing history, given how those two went. Hagler still took the fight. Oh, yes, he did. He took it, and he earned it. And this was the pedestal Marvin Hagler fought his whole life for, just to get to that level. And he finally got it April 15th, 1985, when he knocked out Tommy Hearns in 3 rounds. Got up to the stature of the best fighter in the world, pound for pound. He started getting all of the endorsement deals with all kinds of commercials, all kinds of television shows. He was making an appearance on the Johnny Carson show, which is a big late night comedy show here in the States. And one guy at ringside that was not appeased by it was none other than Sugar Ray Leonard. I'll get to that in a quick second, because a year later, Hagler, who had contemplated retirement, signs to fight John Mugabe in a brutal fight. Hagler wins by a 11th round knockout, but it was a give and take war like the Hearns fight. But an interested spectator was at ringside was none other than Sugar Ray Leonard. And after he saw in his eyes that Hagler finally started to slow down, that's when he pursued the Hagler fight. Became the big man in the boxing game. Oh, yes, he did. April 15th, 1985. My opinion in boxing will always be Marvin Hagler Day. And of course, we know the story with the Leonard fight. The stupid demands of Ray Leonard that Hagler questionably conceded to. If you saw my show last night, I talked about it. He conceded the demands to Ray Leonard to let him have the bigger ring, the bigger gloves, and a 12-round fight instead of a 15-round fight, at which Hagler in turn got the largest purse of his life and his career, which turned out to be greater than $19 million. You know the story of the fight. Leonard wins the first 4 rounds. And for the rest of the way, give or take a boatload of rounds, still turned out to be an epic super event, which was dubbed as the Super Fight. I watched it. Excellent show. Oh, yes, it was excellent. All right. And of course, you know the debate that still goes on 38 years later, who really won the fight, Hagler or Leonard? Leonard was rewarded the decision, but we know the decision is split down the middle. And basically, 38 years later, everybody's still talking about it. Who won between Marvin Hagler and Ray Leonard? Actually, when I walk the streets over here, of all my elevator conversations, all of my street talk, the number one question I'm always asked, who won between Marvin Hagler and Ray Leonard? It's still something 38 years later, people still want to know what really was. I said all along, I thought Leonard eked it out. There were a few close rounds. I won't argue for Hagler, but because of how Hagler felt he was played by Leonard for the 5 years and got strung out, and when he lost the decision, it basically, I don't want to say broke him, but it took a lot out of him to where he basically at that point walked away from the sport. Now, there was a banquet in 1990 in Las Vegas where Bob Arum revealed that Leonard offered Hagler. Yeah, that's how I had it. Leonard, I had it 115, 113 Leonard. That's how I had it. Probably you might had it in the ballpark because you and I are usually on the same page. But there was a talk about a rematch that was offered by Leonard. Hagler waited, but then when they finally talked about in 1990, it was presented to Bob Arum, and Marvin Hagler basically told Ray Leonard to take your contract and go get a life because I'm done with you. Because Hagler was done with Leonard's games. It was also done with boxing. where he moved to Italy and pursued an acting career. Now, of course, the unfortunate circumstances of him passing in 2021, but to show you the respect that he has, Sugar Ray Leonard eloquently said, if I have to give my victory to Marvin Hagler to bring him back to life at Hagler's burial, if that is what it takes to get Hagler back to life, he would do it. Tells you just how great Marvin Hagler was. And we can coin the phrase, earn it. You have my scorecard too. That's how exactly I had it. You coin the phrase having to earn it. We can throw it on a lot of guys. No one had to do it the harder way for that time than Marvellous Marvin Hagler. Having to change his name from Marvin Hagler to Marvellous Marvin, among many other things, but he did earn it. 12 successful title defenses, a magnificent run from 1980 to 1987, ducked no one, fought and beat all comers for the most part during his reign. Definitely an all-time great middleweight, certainly one of the best. May God rest the soul of the terrifically great Marvellous Marvin Hagler. I could talk about more about Hagler fights if I want to, because he was just a dandy. If you're a fight fan, if you didn't like Hagler, I don't know what to tell you. And that'll wrap up this edition of the Fighter Series today. I hope everyone had themselves a wonderful rest of the 8th of April, 2025. I'll be back next week. Until then, good night, take care, and God bless.